I am the feminist who is ruining your perfectly respectful marriage.
So what if abortion ends life?
The notion that the earth is 6,000 years old to be promulgated in schools, that's child abuse.
The US court ruling on religious freedoms has enabled devil worshippers in Florida to hand out educational material about their beliefs to kids at state schools.
Drug dealers are aggressively exploiting children, targeting them because of their age and their vulnerability.
These boys are being used as sex toys, he says, I know that, by many homosexual males. He says they don't seem to think it matters. It doesn't matter to them.
The suicide rate was up sharply among 10 to 14-year-old girls, tripling in the past 15 years.
Then said he unto the disciples, It is impossible but that offenses will come. But woe unto him through whom they come. It were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck and he cast into the sea, than that he should offend one of these little ones.
My name is Dr. David Lee Spence. I practice obstetrics and gynecology and have been doing so for the past 35 years. Since 1990, I've been practicing in Alexandria, Louisiana, providing medical and surgical care for women and delivering their babies. I truly believe that most people view an abortion to be a relatively simple, painless procedure involving little more than a physician going in with a pair of snippets and removing an indeterminate blob of tissue from the womb of a mother. This could not be further from the truth. What we are going to discuss now is a dilatation and curettage of a baby at 12 weeks gestation, commonly referred to as an abortion. If you'll look at this screen, you can actually see a well-developed baby. You can see the head, the abdomen, you can see the fully developed appendages of the baby, you see the large black area, which is the amniotic fluid, and the tissue above it, which is the placenta. If you look at this particular area, you can actually see the beating heart of the baby. You can actually see the baby moving. And once the instrument is introduced, you can actually see the baby move away from the instrument, indicating that the baby actually feels what is about to transpire. Monitoring the baby's heart rate, you can see that it escalates up to approximately 200 beats per minute, indicating that the baby is in dire distress. The baby violently moves away from the instrument in an effort to keep from being suctioned through the curettage. The soft body parts of the baby are being dismembered and retrieved through the cervix. Then an instrument has to be introduced to crush the hardened tissue of the skull in order to remove it through the small opening of the cervical canal. I want to go back to the video for a minute to point out something that is truly unsettling. What you see here in this frame is that the baby's mouth is clearly open. I have viewed thousands of sonogram images at all stages of development during my medical career, and I can tell you that this indicates that the baby is in distress. Indeed, this would be consistent with the child's evasive movements inside of the mother's womb noted earlier. This baby senses trouble and is fighting for his life. It has been my experience that when people actually see what happens to a child during an abortion, that this dramatically changes their position on the issue.
Pro-choice is not necessarily pro-abortion. Like, there are definitely ways that you can reduce the numbers as best as possible and also provide care for those children in the womb.
You know, I have to confess to you, I have a hard time putting, that's a very clever statement, that just because you're for abortion doesn't mean you're against babies. I wonder if the 4,500 babies who are aborted every day would buy that rhetoric.
There's definitely there's something that we disagree on that is at a very deep level, and I don't want to pretend like I'm going to be able to convince you, because I understand.
I understand. What do you think it is inside of a woman before she gives birth to it?
I think it's a fetus.
It's not a human being.
It is a fetus.
So it takes what to become a human being?
To be born.
So it's a matter of location.
I think it's a matter of being able to, like, I really don't want to get into the issue of defining life. I'm not exactly 100% on everything about this.
It's all right, I'm not going to club you with the microphone. Okay, so you think that if the baby moves from inside to outside, that makes it a baby?
I think that when it lives on its own, yes.
If somebody needs, say, a heart monitor, or let's say a kidney monitoring, a dialysis machine to stay alive, would that mean that they're not human because they rely on something?
It doesn't mean they're not human, sir. I know you're trying to get the gotcha questions on this, and like I said, there's a fundamental difference that we have on this, and I respect that. Like, it's just that in some instances, I believe that people should have a choice on it, and I believe that as a man, it's not really my call. Like, I want a woman to be able to have the best medical care, have the best decision, and I want her for it to be the doctor and her that decides.
So as a man, I'm not able to make any sort of moral judgment?
No, sir. And if you and your significant other, you and your wife, it's definitely something you decide on together. But I think it's not the government.
You don't think the government should be imposing values?
I don't think the government should be taking away rights from women.
So you think it's a right to end the life of your child?
I think that Roe v. It is not a child yet. I think it's a fetus, and I think Roe v. Wade has confirmed that it is a right. Yes.
All right. So we really keep coming back to that nagging issue. What is it that makes that child a baby outside, but inside it's not?
Right. And sir, and that is definitely a very key issue. I understand you come from it from your faith background, from any sort of background.
Actually, I come from that from logic.
Okay, you can call it as you wish, sir, and it's fine. Some people disagree on it. The thing is that if you're talking about presidential elections, things like that, I don't even think it's even a major issue to be concerned about.
It is if you're one of those 4,500 babies. All right, let me just ask you one last question. I won't harangue you. If that baby, that thing inside, all right, would you be at least willing to say we're not sure if it's a human being as opposed to just a blob of tissue? Is it possible that you could be wrong on this issue?
I mean, I'm not going to say that I'm 100% certain on everything in the world.
So if that's the case, if it could actually be a human being...
It will be a human being eventually. That's
okay, so either way, you're impeding the life of a human being because it will be. So it's just a matter of time.
Sir, I believe that women should have a right to choose. I believe that
a right to choose to potentially put an end to the life of their own child.
Sir, I believe that we should be working as best we can to reduce abortion. That's
just hasn't happened though.
I know, but there are ways to go about it. But increased contraception access, which I don't know if you agree with that or not either. But that is one way to get around it.
Right. So the issue, however, though, of terminating the life of a baby, you should think that an individual should have the right. Now, so you don't think it's a moral issue?
I think it's a moral decision to be made between a woman and her doctor.
So you're okay with the government imposing some sort of moral values on people, correct? I trust you are. You think it's wrong to rape or to beat somebody up?
That's correct. Sir, I think we're good here.
All right.
I hope
Thank you very much. Appreciate it very much.
When Roe v. Wade was passed in 1973, there was no 3D sonogram. There was no ability, look at me, to watch our babies smile at us before they were born. By 8 weeks, that's not even the first trimester, 8 weeks, your wife's probably still throwing up. 8 weeks, babies will suck their thumbs. We see that they respond to sound. There's evidence building that they're dreaming. Here's a crazy one. You ready for this one? They recoil from pain. So what really the ability to do sonograms has shown us is that when doctors need to draw blood or take a sample and they stick a needle up there to do that, the baby at 8 weeks will pull its heel up, will pull back in away from the needle. Why? Because at 8 weeks, all major organs are functioning, which means you have a nervous system that's developed and you have a brain that receives signals that hurts. We see that the heart is pumping, the liver is making blood cells, the kidneys are clearing fluids, and there's a fingerprint. By 21 weeks, a baby with just a little bit of help can live outside the womb. 21 weeks. Now listen to me. Nearly all of the 1 million abortions committed in the Western world last year were performed after this period of time. So now here's what happens. I know argumentation, and here's what happens. In our head, it's, well, what about this? And what about this horrific situation? And what about this? But listen to me. Statistically speaking, the majority of abortions are not taking place because of the woman's life being in danger or because there was some horrific rape. It is purely around convenience. I don't want to do it. Not ready for this. I didn't ask for this. And so, murder for the sake of convenience. So what ends up happening is you're forced, because this is you can't argue with this. You can't argue that these things are true. So what ends up happening is you show your cards, and your cards show that this isn't a rational argument at all anymore. That this is now purely driven by the exaltation of self. So let me show you this. Just show you how mad things have gone, how insane things have gone. Mary Elizabeth Williams wrote an article on January 23rd, 2013, and here's what she said. She's wildly pro-choice. Let me just read you the title of her article. The title of her article is this: So What If Abortion Ends Life? Here's what she says. Yet I know that throughout my own pregnancies, I never wavered for a moment in the belief that I was carrying a human life inside of me. I believe that's what a fetus is, a human life. And that doesn't make me one iota less solidly pro-choice. All right, now so let's just start thinking about the crazy that just happened there. All right, I have no doubt that what I am carrying is a human life, and yet I have not wavered one iota, one little mark away from this belief that it is the woman's right to choose whether or not to terminate the life of this baby. Who decides this? Who do we give this power to? Well, it's the woman's body. The baby might be in the woman's body, but the baby is not the woman's body. Has its own DNA, has its own genetic code, has its own blood type, has its own functioning brain, its own functioning kidneys, its own functioning lungs, its own dreams. It's not the woman's body. It's in the woman's body. That's not the same. And the argument is, woman should get to choose what she does with her body. Bull. Go prostitute yourself, see if you get arrested. You don't. I don't have the right to do whatever I want with my body. No one does. That's this kind of weird, ethereal argumentation that's so detached from rational thought that it shows that our consciences have been seared. You can't do whatever you want. Tell you what, drive 95 miles an hour naked on the way home today. Just do it. Let's see if you can do whatever you want. See what kind of rights you have. But the argument is, no. You don't get to tell me what I get to do with my body. Of course they do. Our elected democratic republic gets to tell us all sorts of things that we can and can't do. And right now, what they're telling us we can do is murder babies.
I looked her straight in the eye and I said, Daphne, I killed my baby.
He said, you have two choices. You either get out or you get an abortion.
I thought that a baby would mess up my life and he would marry me with a child.
We went into the schools with sex education programs that we knew would increase the sexual activity and therefore the pregnancy rate.
I lived in a crappy apartment and I drove a crappy car and I didn't even have a job. Who was I to raise a child?
As the nurse was performing the ultrasound, I watched her and she was looking at my baby on the monitor. And I asked her, I said, can I see my baby? And she took the monitor literally with her hands and turned it away from me.
And I turned to look at the screen and thought, that looks like a baby. Well, she got very upset and yelled at me and said, turn around, don't you dare look at that.
I did not believe that it was a baby inside of me at the time.
I was told it was a blob of tissue.
They explained it to me that it was a blob, that it wasn't anything yet.
But I needed to have this abortion as soon as possible before this blob of tissue turns into a baby.
And she told me that it wasn't even a baby yet, that it was just a clump of cells.
This is the pregnancy experts saying, there it is, you're pregnant. And then grab her by the bony part of the elbow and squeeze. Do you have your money? Can you do it today?
You write your check for $300 and all your problems are solved. Wish somebody told me what really happens.
I bought the lie. I now know she didn't show me my baby. She just showed me a dot on the screen so that I would go through with the abortion.
When he finished abortion number 1, he ran across the hall. He didn't stop to do a surgical scrub. He did not stop to do operative notes. He went across the hall, changed his gloves, and started abortion number 2.
And a very motherly type woman put her arm around me and walked me down the hallway towards the room.
I knew what I was doing was not all right, and I knew it wasn't going to be over soon. I knew I had to live with this decision once again for the rest of my life.
He began to work on me, and I remember feeling horrifying cramps, and it was worse than they had ever told me.
They turned on the vacuum machine, and it was a loud, horrible noise.
The sound of that vacuum machine, I'll never forget that noise.
The awful sound of the vacuum extracting the baby.
The sound of this machine was like this ghoulish generator, and then the pain hit me.
I literally felt like my soul was being sucked out that day.
It was excruciatingly painful, and I almost passed out.
And immediately, the tears just started rolling down my eyes.
And I remember laying there crying and wishing that I could stop it, but it was too late.
They sucked the life out of my body that I knew I'd never be able to get back.
And I knew right then and there I had made the biggest mistake of my life.
I heard the sound of the vacuum, and all of a sudden I saw a splattering of the blood, and I knew my baby had to be in that jar.
And that memory burned in my mind because I realized that was the only remains of the child that I had had inside of me.
And I heard one nurse say to the other nurse, "It's twins." And then she took the trash bag and she tied it in a knot and she walked out with the twins in that trash bag.
I was hysterical. I was crying, and for the first time, maybe because I was heavily medicated, I felt free to call out and say, you know, it was my baby, it was my baby.
I knew deep inside of me that what I had done was take the life of my own child.
It opened my eyes to what abortion really was, and I knew that when I walked out of that abortion facility that day that I would never have anything to do with abortion ever again.
All the feminists said is my body, my right. This was going to help me. Why didn't I feel that way?
They said my life would get back to normal again. It's never been back to normal again.
The grief and trauma and shame that we as women deal with this choice, I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy.
I had nightmares. I became depressed.
I wanted to meet them. I wanted to see what they would have looked like, their voices.
It affected me as a woman, as a mother, as a wife.
It finally just get to a point where I no longer wanted to live. I felt I could no longer go on.
In the middle of the night, she woke up and she was just crying. And I looked in her face and I just saw terror.
I began to have suicidal thoughts, and I made a suicide attempt.
I turned the gas on in the oven, and thank God a friend came to the door. I tried 2 other times to kill myself as well.
There's not enough tissue in my office to handle the tears of the women when they realize that they may have killed the only baby that they will have.
The doctor told me that because of all of that scarring in my uterus from the abortions, that I had been left infertile and that most likely I would not become pregnant again.
I was 16 when I had my abortion. I'm 48 now, and I'm still coming to terms with the fact that I'm never going to have children the normal way.
I lay on the table and started thinking, how am I going to tell my husband that I'm not going to be able to have children with him? It was the reality of knowing that the only 3 children I would ever bear, I killed.
I thought many times, well, I won't be able to be at my little girl's first birthday party. I won't be having those father-daughter talks. I won't be able to take her to school the first day or walk down the football field at homecoming. I'm going to miss those occasions.
I would just encourage any woman that found themselves in the same situation that they would really think twice about it, and that they wouldn't let fear lead them to make a decision that they would regret the rest of their life.
You don't want to live a life of regrets, wondering what your child looked like, wishing you could hear their laughter, because one day you will experience that if you choose to give your child life.
There's life and joy for everyone in America, and that should be from fertilization to natural death. And so I invite you today and always, it's very important to just choose life.
Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. And before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee, and I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. Thou shalt not kill.